Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Really glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. 2 good martinis for you today, as well as a bad/crazy one. Quick Doris update, Jim. They want her to go door knocking now and make phone calls. Still not going to happen. They say that could make all the difference in a race this close, but they're just going to have to do it without Doris.
Doris did not show up. Doris is not.
You're going to get very upset with her.
You know, Doris, Doris is voting for Irving Schmidlapp this year.
That's right. Yes, she's going. You got
party. That one, Irving. Don't worry.
All right. Well, our first good martini is kind of a fun martini, and it's how the Israeli military is making the people of Lebanon informed about what's going on in their capital city of Beirut. Of course, we know that Israeli intelligence is quite good. They knew exactly where Hassan Nasrallah was. He's no longer with us. They knew where his successor was. He's no longer with us. And as Jim has said, that replacing the head of Hezbollah is kind of like replacing the drummer in Spinal Tap. But a different tactic this time, because the site that is in question here is beneath a hospital in Beirut. Standard tactic for terrorists. Hamas does it all the time in Gaza. Hiding your people, hiding your stuff underneath hospitals, making it very, very hard for that to become a target. So instead of actually attacking it, the Israeli Defense Forces are making it known through their spokesman, Daniel Hagari, that this place is there. And not only is it a bunker for Hezbollah leaders, there's a ton of cash there. So let's go to this television message that he issued yesterday afternoon Eastern time. Here's step one.
Tonight, I am going to declassify intelligence on a site that we did not strike, where Hezbollah has millions of dollars in gold and cash, in Hassan Nasrallah's bunker. Where is the bunker located? Directly under El Sahel Hospital, in the heart of Beirut, in the Dahia. This is the hospital. From both sides you can see an entry and exit. Those are entry and exit tunnel shafts from the underground bunker.
And they have schematics here of exactly where the tunnel entrances and exits are, the layout of the bunker underneath the hospital, including the stash where all the money and gold supposedly is. And so here's what he says.
There are hundreds of millions of dollars in cash and gold inside the bunker right now. I'm calling on the Lebanese government, Lebanese authorities, and the international organizations. Don't allow Hezbollah to use the money for terror and to attack Israel.
Now, he could have told the international organizations that, not in a publicly televised statement. So obviously it's geared for the Lebanese people. Jim, you joked yesterday that they need 14 dump trucks like Die Hard 3 and Simon Peter Gruber. But what do you make of the Israeli tactics here?
Well, first of all, this just handed to me, Greg. George Clooney has called a meeting of 10 friends. And guys, we have an opportunity to do something. It's going to be the most awesome thing ever. We stole the nomination from Joe Biden, and now we can steal a ton of gold. I'm doing my best to not quote from Die Hard with a Vengeance. First of all, this has got to be the most mortifying thing for any terrorist. And now the question is, who's got the stones to steal from Hezbollah? Who's got the nerve? Because whatever's left of Hezbollah would come after you do that. But on the other hand, with what? Because you're going to have a couple $100 million and their gold and all that kind of stuff. This is the most delicious revenge you can possibly imagine. A lot of the news out of the Middle East is deeply grim and obviously it involves terrible death and destruction. But with this one, I mean, first of all, every thief from, Istanbul to Bangkok is looking at it and saying, wait, you gave us the schematics? You gave us everything? All right, guys, let's get together. Who knows somebody in Beirut? If you're Hezbollah, do you try to move it out of there now that everybody's looking for it? Do you arm the place to the teeth? You know that money is not going to be particularly safe right now, and probably you're going to try to do. Or do you worry about some other group coming in and deciding? It's the Lebanese government. Do they have the manpower with the traditional army to go into that site and say, "Hey, we are ceasing this as inappropriate funding"? I don't know. It's just enormously fun and just kind of bizarre and a fascinating move by the Israelis. Hezbollah is really in trouble, and you got to figure whatever their assets are right now, it's probably going to decline. Sell your stock in Hezbollah right now, because I think that their financial bottom line doesn't look as secure as it used to.
Part of the statement that we didn't put out there was that he's saying, they're getting a ton of money from the Iranians, and it's devaluing your currency. So your economy, your earning power, your spending power is suffering because of the terrorist money coming into Hezbollah. We're not at war with you. We're at war with them. And so, there's a lot of money that just happens to be right here. And oh, by the way, you take a left here, a right here, go down the stairs.
It'd be a shame if something happened to it. Nice little financial vault you got there. It's a shame what happened to Bruce Willis, because you could make Die Hard. I would say Die Hard 6, but really Die Hard 5, because the fifth one didn't happen. It does not exist. But either that, but can you imagine a movie where we're rooting for Simon Gruber, just wanting him to get in and to get all the gold out? Not fun. Jeremy Irons, call your agent.
Now, if the UN does get there first, it's going to end up in a crate in a warehouse like at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where top men will be investigating this for decades to come.
Greg, we should give credit where it's due. I have no doubt that if the UN gets involved, they will absolutely move in, seize the gold, seize the money, say that it is no longer appropriate to be used by Hezbollah, remove it, and immediately distribute it to Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what they'll do.
Hey, that money belongs in the hands of Hamas,
That doesn't even remotely surprise me if that were to happen from the UN. But nonetheless, if you're Hezbollah, I don't know if you're these austere scholars and so forth, if you're supposed to be drinking, but I would certainly not be surprised if in some other hideout that you're pounding them back. But before you do that, have some Z-Biotics, because if you're going to have those drinks, you'll want to feel better the next day, and Z-Biotics will help you do that.
In fact, this just handed to me. The IDF has released the location of the Hezbollah bar. All the good stuff on the bottom shelf. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. When you drink, alcohol gets converted to a toxic byproduct in your gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next morning. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, as I'm sure you always do, and you'll feel your best the following morning.
Go to zbiotics.com/3ml to get 15% off on your first order when you use 3ml at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantees, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Visit zbiotics.com/3ml and use the code 3ml at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times. All right, Jim, on to our second good martini now, which is taken from the pages of today's Morning Jolt, which all of you hopefully subscribe to and read every day. It's about cracks in the blue wall, about the Harris campaign getting nervous. They say in particular about Michigan and possibly Wisconsin as well. My kind of gut feeling was that Pennsylvania might be the one that is the most vulnerable for them, but obviously they've got information and polling that would indicate more detail than I'm aware of. You also point out in the Jolt today, Jim, that while they're not giving up on North Carolina, things are looking bleaker there. And so if Trump seems to be ahead in Georgia, somewhat right around, maybe even above the margin of error, if he were to take North Carolina, he's allegedly slightly ahead in Arizona, but I think that's tightening up. If he were to get one of those blue wall states, obviously he would be in very good shape. And so the Harris campaign trying to do what it can to keep going here. But the fact that they're even admitting this tells you something. What does it tell you? And what does it tell you about the state of the race?
Sure. I mean, look, the overwhelming majority of all the polling and all the polling averages in all 7 of the key swing states, they're all within the margin of error. And most of them are, I don't think anybody in any of the polling averages has a lead outside of 2 percentage points. So first step, either one of them could win any one of those 7. And while it's theoretically possible one or the other could sweep all 7, it very rarely shakes out that way. You'll probably see 6-1, 5-2 is probably the more likely scenario there. The fact that this is coming from the Harris campaign makes it more significant, because we know that the public message is we're going to fight for every vote and again, they're all close. The fact that they're nervous, and I concur with you that, like, if anything, you thought that Pennsylvania was going to be the one that they probably have the biggest advantage in. But last week I was out in Wisconsin, and I noted that there was a poll of Catholic voters that put Trump up by 18 percentage points. Now, that's about a quarter of the state's electorate. That's, this is a group that Biden won very narrowly back in 2020. So it seems like there's good polling evidence to demonstrate that sense of nervousness. The observation about North Carolina, another destination on my swing state tour, although to be honest, it was just the Charlotte airport during a stopover. But, all the Cinnabon counter people, no. But semi-seriously, one of the big worries had been, first of all, this has been a state that Trump won the last 2 times he ran. You figure he's got this is a light red Republican state. And then the hurricane hits. And there was a lot of nervousness about whether turnout was going to decline. Although it's also worth noting that Asheville, which is kind of in the center and one of the spots that got hit the hardest, Asheville is a Democrat-leaning city. And so you could see, does it balance out that way? It's too early to say in terms of turnout, but you can say that 76 of the 80 early voting spots in this part of the state were able to open. And they are basically telling people, if you need to vote at a different spot, if you've had to relocate because of the hurricane, we will accept your ballot. Basically, they're pulling out all the stops to make it as easy as possible for people to vote in that. Look, you have a natural disaster on this scale. You're going to have turnout probably decline at least a little bit, but I don't think you're going to see a dramatic drop in that. So the Harris campaign saying they don't feel great about North Carolina, that lines up with it. And then finally, the last piece of interesting evidence today. Atlanta Journal-Constitution comes out with a poll, has Trump ahead by 4 percentage points, which the way the polling is going lately, a 4 percentage point lead feels like a landslide, feels like a really, huge one. And they're like, well, there's still 8% undecided, and thus, Harris could win. And yes, technically that's true. But people start wondering, how can somebody like Dave Wasserman say, I've seen enough and project a winner? Well, as your pool of either an undecided voter or a vote that has not been counted gets smaller and smaller, for the underdog to overtake it, you need that to split even more sharply in favor of the underdog. Do I have particular reason to think that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution poll came down on 2 stone tablets? No, but let's just assume for the sake of argument, its representation of the state of the electorate is accurate. Kamala Harris would need the remaining the entire 8% to show up and vote. And people who are undecided at this point, I think, are very shaky to just say, as every comedian says, what else do you need to see, folks? I think the choice is pretty clear. But Harris would need that remaining vote to split 75% to 25% in her favor. And that feels like a lot. That's when he's winning the state overall and you need this last chunk to suddenly split in her favor by that wide a margin, very tall order. So look, you'd look at that and you'd say, okay, Georgia looks pretty good for Trump. Not locked in, not solid. The overall, most of these polls still put it very close. But, you got Georgia and North Carolina. And if you get one of them, and I think you're right, that he's ahead in Arizona very narrowly. And I always figured Trump was going to do better in the Sun Belt states. Getting to 270 looks easier for him than it does for her as of this date, October 22nd. Ask me tomorrow, it might be different.
I've always been leery about Michigan for a number of reasons. They had a voting amendment back in 2022, which loosened things up in terms of voter ID and so forth, which always makes me a little more skittish. But of course, you got issues with the Arab vote and Kamala Harris. I saw one poll where Trump's now winning the Arab vote. I think that might be beyond Michigan even, but I saw another poll where Jill Stein's doing really well with the Arab vote. So either way, those are votes Kamala's not getting. So that might be balancing things out a little bit. But given, again, Michigan's well established on this podcast sloppy history of maintaining voter rolls, I just never feel great about Michigan. Wisconsin, I think the very tired joke is what's going to happen in Waukesha, but it's true about Trump. The Milwaukee suburbs, historically, he's underperformed there compared to previous Republican nominees. If that number can get back up, I think he's going to obviously have a better chance than he has in the last cycle. But Wisconsin, both of 2016 and 2020 were razor thin. So a lot to potentially unfold here in the next couple of weeks and probably even beyond.
2 points to add to that, Greg. First, it was a poll of Arab Americans. I think a lot of people use the terms Arab and Muslim interchangeably. That is not the case. America has quite a few Arab Christians, and in particular Lebanese Christians. These people are traditionally, socially conservative, and so we shouldn't be all that shocked by the fact that they are supporting Trump by a narrow margin by that. Secondly, just want to give you an update on Diane, my phone previous owner of my phone. Breaking news, Senator Tammy Baldwin. Tammy Baldwin is texting Diane directly. I have bad news, and I wanted you to hear it directly from me. That's the kind of person the senator is. She doesn't want you hearing this from the, NBC or something like that.
One-on-one. Yep.
Cook Political Report just downgraded our race from leans Democrat to toss-up. My right-wing opponent and his MAGA allies, that's Hovey, yeah, he's crazy, have spent a whopping 77, yeah, because she's not been spending any money, $77 million to flip this seat, and the strategy is clearly working. But what a nice endorsement for the Hovey campaign. The election experts like Cook Political move our race to the toss-up category. All right. Will you rush a donation to help defend Wisconsin Senate seat in our Democratic Senate majority? I'm countful on your support in these difficult moments, friend. I hadn't realized that Diane and Senator Tammy Baldwin were so close, but apparently they are. Bad news, Senator. Diane is not going to come through for you this year.
I'm sure she'll call you personally.
She might.
Try and
warm
work that
welcome
out.
on the phone.
I will say this, though. In terms of the Democrats wanting Doris to get out there, going door to door, Republicans still need to do that. I feel like there has been this momentum shift, in part by the Harris campaign admitting in various places. We talked about the Pennsylvania story last week. We got this story now, or various stories that you've compiled for today's Jolt, that suggests the momentum is with Trump. And it may well be, but you still got to get people out to the polls and actually vote, not only in that race, but a bunch of other races. I feel like a lot of Republicans, at least on the Twitter right, are looking at Polymarket and the betting odds and thinking that's the real trend and what really matters. Look, 2016, who do you think was favored going into Election Day by, 95 points of who had a chance to win? Hillary. Hillary was heavily favored to win, and it didn't work out that way. You need actual votes, not just looking at the charts.
Yeah, it's an interesting measuring stick. I wouldn't say totally ignore it. But I think the Wall Street Journal did a profile on like this guy who was betting like millions, and as a result of it was actually kind of pulling it in the direction of Trump. Just the other thing, like if Kamala Harris wins, we're going to look back on those stories with, veterans of previous Republican campaigns, presidential campaigns, saying Charlie Kirk and Turning Point. I don't know if I, trust these guys. The Elon Musk super PAC. Look, these groups have never done this thing before, so they could be great at it. They also could be not good at it. They're kind of learning on the fly. And so if Harris wins, I think we're going to look back and say, we should have paid more attention to that as a point of concern for the Republican chances this year. In 2016, Hillary had way more campaign offices, way more volunteers, way more paid staff, all that kind of stuff, and it didn't do her any good. I think at the end, the problem was with the candidate. You could see the parallels to this year, but we'll know a lot more in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, we will
3 weeks, considering how long it's going to take them to count the votes.
And both campaigns, supporters are pretty confident they're going to win. And I think, was it Mark Halperin who was talking last week or the week before about if Trump actually does win, we're going to have the biggest mental health crisis that we've ever seen in this country. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but we know that mental health is a serious issue. And we want to let you know this 3 Martini Lunch podcast is sponsored today by BetterHelp. But whether it's issues at work, social settings, family dynamics, which can also get complicated, especially if you're vehemently on different sides of political arguments this time of year and this type of the cycle, maybe you need something more than the typical conversation with a friend, and that's where BetterHelp can come in. BetterHelp, where all therapists are licensed, accredited professionals, and allows you to connect with them in a safe and convenient online environment. You pay a low flat fee for both live sessions as well as messaging with your therapist, and therapy doesn't need to be expensive. You also do it at your own time and at your own pace. Communicate with your therapist as often as you want and whenever you feel that it is needed. So take the mask off this Halloween season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/3ML today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/3ML.
The supermarket doesn't lie. The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. Latest reports show more people are changing where they're buying their groceries. Heading to box stores like Walmart goes to show that food and energy prices have yet to go down. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Jim. While Republicans are bullish, a little less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, there's also some signs that on the issue front, Newsweek magazine with an interesting story, that abortion has now overtaken immigration as the number 2 issue of voter concerns. The economy is still number 1 by quite a big margin, regularly cited by around 60% of respondents. But now abortion, which had been cited as a key issue by 21% of respondents back in July, now cited by 38% of respondents in the latest poll, October 2024. Immigration is now at 36%. So pretty much neck and neck. But as we know, Democratic voters this year are fired up. We see polls like Amendment 4 down in Florida, almost a 2-to-1 advantage in favor of the pro-choice, pro-abortion position down there, which would pretty much allow abortion for just about any reason. Right now, the law is 6 weeks to get an abortion in the state of Florida. Republicans have kind of muddied the waters because Trump said that wasn't enough, and then he said he was actually against the amendment when the Arizona decision came down, citing like an 1864 law, which was even before Arizona was a state, saying only the life of the mother. Trump, who had said, every state should get to decide. Well, no, not that one. We don't like that one. So the legislature will fix that. And the legislature did take action. But the Democrats, if you're, in any sort of competitive state for the presidency, for Senate, for even the House, you are seeing the left just pummel your airwaves with abortion ads. And one of them is our own senator here in Virginia, Tim Kaine. And Tim Kaine might have the most dishonest abortion ad of all time. Take a listen here. And other than the last line of that he approves this message, see if there's a single line here that's actually true.
When the Supreme Court robbed millions of women of their right to choose,
Virginia became the last southern state where abortion remains legal. For now.
If Republicans take control in Washington and pass a national abortion ban,
Virginia women will have no options.
And Republicans won't stop there.
They'll restrict or ban contraception and IVF.
Our freedom is on the ballot. Tim Kaine will stand up for it and for us.
I'm Tim Kaine, and I approve this message.
All right, Jim. The Supreme Court did not rob millions of women their right to choose. They kicked it to the states, and some states are more restrictive than others. If Republicans take control in Washington and pass a national abortion ban, Virginia women will have no options. That's because you and I could pass an abortion ban at 38 weeks and they would call it a national abortion ban. Mm-hmm. That's just the way the language is going. And then banning contraception, IVF. I mean, this contraception canard has been going back to the 2012 campaign. And Trump actually wants to make IVF an entitlement, taxpayer-funded IVF. So that's clearly not the case. And I wish the Republicans were more concrete about their position on pro-life issues like they used to be. But what do you make of the trend of this being a bigger and bigger issue for voters and the way the Democrats are couching it this year?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's indisputably you're seeing the consequence of advertising. And, for a good chunk of this year, your economy was always going to be the highest, usually getting somewhere 40 to 50%. For a long time, immigration was a close second, and then it kind of slid down to the 30s and then down to the 40s. And then before this, I was starting to see both of them around 15%. So you could say, all right, there's one main priority and then two sub-priorities, and they're about even. Now, as you mentioned, at least in this most recent poll, abortion has surpassed immigration. Well, the thing is as you mentioned, it's not just the Harris campaign, although it's recognized. Harris has raised $1 billion since she became the nominee. Earlier this week, I was doing the Hugh Hewitt show, and Hugh had been up in Maine, and he was seeing Harris ads everywhere. And he's like, Jim, they can't really be trying to, sway the 2nd congressional district. Yeah, actually, they can. I mean, I think Trump's going to win it, but I think obviously, it's a sign that they're worried about Maine. I don't think they are. I think when you've got $1 billion, you can run ads everywhere. You can run ads into, places you probably don't think you have to worry about. You can run national advertising, which is going to run the ads everywhere. I think actually in a way that's almost a problem for the Harris campaign, that they've got a ton of money and they might as well just run ads everywhere. This is not necessarily, and the overwhelming message of almost all of their advertising is abortion, right? They discuss other issues here and there, but that is the dominant one. And you're right. It's a big issue of the Senate races. We are in the neck of the woods of a couple of hotly contested House races. Abortion is just the Democrat ads just relentlessly on that one. I don't think around our neck of the woods they elect dog catcher, but I have a suspicion that, you're going to see, John Jones is the only 100% rated pro-choice dog catcher, as just the Democratic messaging on that. When you have one party just relentlessly beating the drum on that, and it's not the Republican. First of all, you're right. Republicans are not beating the drum on the pro-life message. But also, I feel like it's not that immigration and the border slipped out of the discussion of priorities. Part of it is that the Republicans have a nominee who will start talking about Arnold Palmer and parts of his game in ways that we didn't. Who just, like The McDonald's thing was a really great appearance for him, but that's not necessarily reinforcing a message on the border or illegal immigration or the economy or something like that. So, like, there's a part of it is that the Republican nominee talks about a much wider stuff. The Republican nominee's advertising is about a whole bunch of stuff. They must have determined through focus groups or testing that the transgender sex change surgeries for prisoners is a resident issue, and I'm sure it is. But when you run a ton of ads on that, then you're not running ads on illegal immigration to the border. Like, that's just a consequence of that. So I think this is a reflection of when one party floods the airwaves with a message, Americans will think more about that message. If the Republicans had a comparable amount of money and a comparable amount of commercials and radio ads and web ads and all that stuff, and they're putting it out everywhere on either the abortion, on the pro-life side of the issue, or on any other issue, you would see that number go up in voter priorities as well. People tend to gravitate to whatever you're talking about. So, it's a little frustrating for pro-lifers, a little frustrating for those who think the border and illegal immigration are, if not the top issue, then a strong 2 or a 1A. I think everybody would agree the economy is pretty darn important. I don't think it'll drop out of it. I think if you care about the issue about immigration and border security, you know who you're voting for, and you've known who you're voting for really for the past 4 years. I don't think you really have wavered too much on this, but a little slightly for Republicans, it's a little bit of a rattle in the engine as you're going into the final stretch here. Yeah, you mentioned the transgender ad, surgeries, taxpayer-funded surgeries for prisoners, and the biological men and women's sports. Those are constantly running during sporting events, yes, and Kamala Harris is running ads as well. I understand they have the right to run political ads during sporting events. I really don't like watching political ads during sporting events because it's kind of your oasis from all the political process, but you just can't get away from it. The other weird political tactic, which has nothing to do with abortion, the Harris campaign's insistence that Trump is low energy. I don't know if they're just trying to bait him. I mean, the guy sleeps like 2 hours a day. Of all the things you could accuse Trump of, that's really not it. It's like it was when Tim Walz, was it Walz or somebody else who said, yeah, what has he ever built? I mean, there are things to definitely criticize Donald Trump about, not building anything and not having energy. I don't think those are the two that are going to land the most. Now, Greg, as former president said, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. The construction workers did it, not Trump. How many times did we see him tweeting at 3 a.m.? I'd be thinking, like, is the president getting any sleep? Is this part of right? Yeah. So there's that aspect. You are correct that the advertising, the only upside of a political ad just inundating you during commercial breaks during sports events, because let's face it, that's the only live TV anybody watches anymore, is that you don't get the, are you feeling down, tired, a little bummed? Try Provacicil, or side effects may include spontaneous human combustion. That kind of pick your poison when it comes to advertising. Yes. Not as good as the ads on this program, like Z-Biotics. Well, the more you watch political ads, the more you're going to need Z-Biotics. Although, depending on what point of the game it is, it might be. We'll take it before the game. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, Jim, have a great day. Tomorrow, we need to point out, tomorrow's a special day in the 3 Martini Lunch. We teased it a little bit in our anniversary special, but tomorrow we have one of those rare episodes where we have a special guest. Let's just say Jim was a guest on this person's podcast a week or two ago. That will narrow it down. Yes. A lot of fun. Looking forward to that. So tune in on the Wednesday 3 Martini Lunch. Jim, have a great day. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Greg. Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They are a huge help to us. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Tuesday and join us again on Wednesday for a special edition of the 3 Martini Lunch.